You guys aren't going to believe this, but I can actually hit something with this now. It's amazing! Hello and welcome back to another part of the DIY SSG96 project, which is aiming to answer the question, can you build yourself a comparable rifle to a Novritsch rifle for less than the cost of it? And so we are looking at this rifle, the Cyma CM706, and we're hoping to build it up to perform the same as a Novritsch rifle for less. Now, if this is the first part of the video you're seeing, I highly recommend going back to the start of the playlist, which should be linked here, one of the corners, and watching it through to get an understanding of what the performance of this rifle is like out of the box, its features, and then what upgrades and work we've done so far to try and improve the performance. If you've been following the project so far and you haven't already, please do consider subscribing and dropping a like on this video. It really does help out and keeps the channel going. So with that out of the way, let's crack on with this week's video. So today we're looking at switching out the inner barrel and hop-up assembly to try and improve performance. So I alluded to the parts I was going to use in the previous video, but for those of you who want a reminder, we have here a ZCI 455mm 6.02 steel barrel. I've not used these before, but I've heard very good things about their performance to price ratio, so I thought I'd get some to check out. And we're going to be pairing that with an Action Army hop chamber and a Maple Leaf MR hop rubber and an appropriate nub for that. The barrel itself is constructed from some form of steel. A magnet will stick to it, although it doesn't seem to have the strongest attraction, so I'm assuming it's got quite a high zinc content to it. So looking at the muzzle of the barrel, we see it's got a fairly deep crowning on it, which is good to see because a bit of crowning does help with the stability of BBs leaving the barrel. And just behind that we can see an O-ring put on an O-ring groove, which is very nice for AEGs. However, in this rifle we won't really use that, as we're going to be using tape spacers like we did in the previous video to stabilise this barrel in the outer barrel. We can also see engraved on the end of the barrel is the diameter 6.02 and the length 450mm. Coming all the way back, we see we have locking lugs for both your standard hop unit position and M14 styles, which is nice. They cater for both because M14s do need parts as well. We've got a very long locking groove on the bottom, and we have a nice straight cut window, which is perfect for doing R hops. This is hard to show on camera, but looking down the barrel, the inner quality is very shiny and I can't see any form of deep machining marks. I think that bore looks quite nice. Overall, for the price I paid, which was about £23, I'm very happy with the quality of these barrels. So onto this barrel we're putting a 70° MR hop. Now the degree does not refer to the temperature or the angle, it refers to the hardness of the rubber. The higher the degree number, the harder the rubber. Now the general rule of thumb is the higher the FPS of the rifle, the harder the rubber you need. I thought the 70° was the right one to use for UK power limits. However, I have been informed by some people that maybe I should have gone with something like a 65 or 60. So we'll see how it performs on the 70 and maybe revisit this at a later date and try a softer rubber. Now the barrel and rubber will be installed into an Action Army hop chamber. Really, when it comes to Type 96s, I had two choices of upgrade chambers to go for, either the Airsoft Pro hop chamber or the Action Army hop chamber. Originally I wanted to go with the Airsoft Pro one because I could use a Type 96 barrel in it. So we could try just upgrading the hop unit and seeing how that affected the performance. However, on discovery that the Cyma doesn't use a standard Type 96 barrel, I abandoned that idea. I still wanted to go with the Airsoft Pro chamber because it was slightly cheaper and I think it would do absolutely fine. However, I couldn't find any in stock. Plus, a friend of mine had this Action Army chamber sitting around spare, so he's given that to me. However, I have factored in the retail cost, which is £45, into the build cost. The final part bought for this install is the hop nub, which is not a standard round nub, but is in fact one of the Maple Leaf style concave ones. Admittedly, I ordered the AK2M4 own brand version because they're just as good, if not more so, because you can get them in different hardnesses, and they're like a third the cost. So now that I've shown you the part, let's run over the costs involved. So the cheapest thing we ordered was the nub at £2, then the hop-up rubber at £8.50, then the barrel at £23, and finally the hop chamber at £46.95. So that, when combined, comes to a total of £80.45, which is not bad considering we're replacing pretty much half the internals. So when we factor that in with the cost of the rifle, that takes the build cost up to £220 and 45 pence. Now, compared to a Novritsch rifle, which retails for €349, if we convert that straight to pounds, that's about £303. So there's some debate going on about whether or not you'll pay import taxes on the Novritsch rifles. I can't find a UK VAT number on his website. It does say somewhere on his FAQ part of his website that VAT is payable on receipt in the UK. So that makes me think that yes, you're going to have to pay import taxes and handling fees and VAT if you buy this. So really that £303 rifle is going to work out closer to 400. But let's just say it's not, you're going to go for the 300. So at the moment we're still £80 under budget. Right, so the install process on this is fairly straightforward. We're going to put the hop-up rubber onto the barrel. We're then going to install the barrel in the hop chamber. Now I noticed when I was doing this that there was still a bit of wiggle room, so I took that one back out, re-Teflon taped the barrel and then reinstalled it into the hop chamber so that it was a fairly tight press to get it in there. Then, just like an AEG hop chamber, we're going to put a locking lug in to hold the barrel firmly in place. Now, whilst locking the barrel in place, take care to make sure that the barrel is straight inside the hop-up chamber. We can then put the hop nub in place and assemble the hop-up adjustment arms, and then put on the end cap to hold it all into place. Now comes the rather tedious bit. Again, we're going to have to stabilise this in the outer barrel. Now this is a bit of a bodge job, but I found this to work absolutely fine. The Action Army hop chamber, and in fact your most standard hop chambers in APS-2 style rifles, so that's your Maruzen, your I'm assuming the Novritsch rifle, I haven't got one to check that. Those hop chambers are smaller than the Cyma one, or I should say the Cyma is bigger than everyone else's. So the Action Army chamber will float in the outer barrel, but we're going to use tape to form tight barrel spaces to stabilise the inner barrel and the outer barrel. And if we use the same technique we did last time and make sure when we cut the tape we stop it at exactly the same point we started it, we should be able to stabilise the hop-up chamber pretty central in the outer barrel. So, as with last time, we're going to do it in 3 places, one fairly close to the hop chamber, one halfway down the barrel and one fairly close to the muzzle. Now I have gone for a shorter barrel than the stock barrel. This is to maximise our energy efficiency for heavier weight BBs, because we only have a certain cylinder volume, and as you go up the weight you need to increase your cylinder to barrel volume ratio. Now there's a whole load of weird science behind that, and it's been gone over tons and tons of times in various forums, like the Airsoft Sniper forum, but 455 to 450 mil barrels are pretty good for running heavier weight BBs with these cylinder volumes, hence why I've gone for it. So once the tape is all installed in different places and the barrel fits snugly in the outer barrel, let's install it in there and put the rifle back together. And now we can take it to the range and test its performance. So after I finished installing the upgraded barrel, I took it up to Gunman to run it through my test procedure. I'm not going to show that entire section here in this video because it'll make it far too long, but if you are interested, I've uploaded that as a separate video and you can check that out here. Now once I got back from testing it, I ran it through the chrono to see how the power had been affected with the correct hop setup, and I have to say that the consistency from shot to shot has improved greatly over the stock setup. So for reference, the stock rifle with 0.4 gram BBs had an average power output of 310 FPS with a variance of almost 15 FPS from shot to shot, which when you convert it through to joules, it's about 1.8 joules with a variance of almost 0.2 joules, which works out at almost 10% power variance, which is not very good when you're trying to build a consistent rifle. Compare that now to our free upgrades, which has basically been looking at improving the seal of the cylinder, and now the new barrel and hop assembly. We are getting a FPS output with 0.4s on average of 326 FPS and a variance of only 5.8, which is much better than our 15 beforehand. Now, converting that through to joules, that works out at pretty much 2 joules on the nose and a power variance of 0.07 joules, which brings it all the way down to only 3.5% power variance as opposed to the almost 10% power variance we're getting stock. And just for reference, converting that through, if that was a 0.2 gram BB, that would be about 460 FPS and plus or minus 4 FPS variant, which I think is pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. Right, so just a quick reminder about the course of fire we ran the rifle through. There were 4 targets set up at 40 metres, 50 metres, 65 metres and 85 metres. The 40 and 50 metre targets both had A4 sheets of paper set up on them, so we could see what grouping we got on them, and then the 65 and 85 metre targets were more there just to see if we could hit them, and then we could look at the video footage to see roughly what kind of grouping we got out of them. So let's dive on in and look straight away at the 40 metre target. Now, the first thing to note here is that all of the shots have dropped quite low on the paper. Now, this was due to a slight issue we found with the hop-up, which was that the adjustment screw kept undoing itself as we fired shots. Now, I've spoken to people who have the Action Army chamber themselves, and apparently this does happen occasionally. However, it's a simple fix, and one that I will do now that I'm back in the office, which is to put Teflon tape or a bit of weak Loctite on the screw to just hold it in place. Fortunately, out at the range I couldn't do this. However, I figured out what the issue was after doing the 40 metre grouping, and after that point I would readjust the hop and get it optimal before doing the 5-round groups onto whichever target I was shooting at. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's have a look and see what grouping we actually got. So we can see that the shots kind of fell into 2 groups, with shots 1, 2 and 5 all hitting pretty much on the centre line, and 3 and 4 going off to the right. Now, looking at the scope cam footage, that may actually be down more to me than the rifle itself, with me leaning the rifle ever so slightly in those shots, and then the hop curving them off to one side, so that kind of may be a reflection on me. But still, factoring in my incompetence, we still managed to get a grouping of only 5 centimetres vertically and 12 centimetres horizontally, which is, you know, half the width of A4 paper at 40 metres. That is definitely going to be hit on a player at that distance. Now, the 50 metre has definitely seen vast improvements over the previous rifle setup, where I couldn't even get a grouping onto paper. Here we can see 3, or technically 4 of the 5 shots I took got onto the A4 piece of paper, with shot number 5 just clipping the bottom corner, and shot 4 going just slightly off the bottom right edge. Now, I have a feeling that this was the hop again loosening itself for those last 2 shots, because our point of aim was fairly consistent up in the top left, but again, looking at the scope cam, I was leaning the rifle slightly between shots, which is bad practice on my part, and really is a bit annoying because it kind of ruins the rifle performance. But then again, we're not seeing precision point hits here. We are seeing a bit of a group spread. However, at 50 metres, you're still going to reliably be able to hit a torso-sized target. Right, so looking at the 60 metre target, we didn't have paper on it, but we were able to look at the scope cam footage and the target cam footage and see roughly where the shots fell. So again, 5-round grouping. My point of aim was pretty decent, all of them in a fairly small area, but the spread is a bit further, forming kind of an arrowhead here. It's kind of hard to see a size here. However, I can put up a little bit of video of me talking near that, and as you can see, all of those shots landed within a kind of person-shaped area at 65 metres. So, my conclusions here is this rifle is now definitely skirmishable out to at least 65 metres and is able to reliably hit a player-sized target, especially one wearing, you know, either a chest rig or belt kit where they're slightly bulked out a bit. You're definitely going to be landing shots on them, and if you don't hit with your first shot, you're most likely going to hit with your second shot. So that's a much better improvement over the previous setup of the rifle, which was putting rounds pretty much everywhere on that oil container, as opposed to pretty much just that centre column. Now finally, let's have a look at the 80 metre. So the 80 metre target was pretty much 2 oil drums standing on some pallets. Again, for size reference, here's some footage of me near it. So I'd zeroed the scope for the 50 metre oil drums, and then to be able to hit these oil drums, I had to hold over. I believe I was on the 6th mil dot down on my scope. But still, arcing the BBs in and holding over, I was able to get 5 of 7 shots onto the barrel, and admittedly, the 7th shot I had to aim 1 mil dot higher because the hop had unscrewed again. Is it going to be skirmishable out to 85 metres? Probably not. You're not going to be hitting your player every time, but it is definitely, you know, area effect, keeping heads down and occasionally getting a lucky shot onto a player. So I would say this is starting to get, you know, on par with the performance of a stock SSG96 out of the box. And bearing in mind, we've only spent £220 on it, and now in the UK you're going to be looking at more like £400 for an SSG96. So for pretty much half the cost now, we have got a half decent sniper rifle performance-wise. Admittedly, we don't have the left-hand bolt, and we don't have the cocked indicator. But other than that, we're doing pretty good, aren't we? Now, before I get carried away singing the praise of this rifle, we've got to remember there are still some flaws in it. So, first of all, that hop-up adjust, unscrewing itself, is not the best, but we are going to mod that and fix that. That's going to be fairly quick to do. The stock is starting to get a bit wobbly, so I'm going to have to look at taking this apart and stabilising that and fixing that issue, but hopefully that'll be fairly straightforward to do. And also, we've got to bear in mind that we don't have the cock indicator on it, nor the ability to switch this to a left-hand bolt cock. Admittedly, I don't care about having a left-handed bolt cock, and if you don't care about having it, then I don't see why you would even be worried about not having it, if that makes sense. But the cocked indicator would be a nice to have. Unfortunately, the Cymer model is going to be pretty hard to modify it to do that, just because of how it's set up. But hey ho, a lot of rifles don't have it, it's not a be all end all. However, if you desperately want that, then at the moment the Novritsch rifle is the way to go for that, or the well MB01 that also has it. So I'm actually pretty happy with the performance we're getting out of the rifle, because at the moment it owes me £220 and I'm now able to reach out to about 85 metres with a 0.4 gram BB. From what I've seen of other people's reviews of the SSG96, this is getting pretty comparable performance wise. Now, admittedly, I think if I step up the weight, I should be able to decrease that grouping size and slightly increase that maximum range. But still, I'm pretty happy that almost every time I can ping an oil drum at 85 metres. And bearing in mind, I still have 50 FPS in 0.2 terms to play with to put in a stronger spring to just up that range a bit further. So where do we go from here? Well, I think there are kind of two routes we can go down now. One is leave it as it is and wait for sights to reopen and get out and actually skirmish with this rifle and see how it performs in a game. Because I think for Tuddenham at least, this rifle, which is able to hit pretty well between the minimum engagement of 30 metres and up to like 70-ish metres, the ranges at Tuddenham, I think that rifle will do absolutely fine. Or the other route we can go down is continue the upgrade process. So I think the next logical step would be to try and do a TDC mod on this, top dead centre hot mod on this. After all, the Novritsch rifle does have a TDC, so I should probably put a TDC in this and see how hard that is. Now, I haven't had a look yet. There may be commercial kits to buy to do this conversion, or I could 3D design my own, or I know Alan, who is part of Thin Brown Line, has been designing his own TDC hot for his Type 96 rifle, so I can get the files off him and do it to my one. And then there are kind of two sub options. We do the hidden style with the grub screw inside the barrel like Novritsch's, or we go for the easy adjust version, which has a little kind of almost like scope turret that sits on top of the barrel and can be adjusted. So I'm going to actually leave this one up to you guys. What do you think we should do next? Should I wait and skirmish with it and see how I do, or should I go down and do the TDC route? So why don't you guys let me know in the comments below, or over on my Facebook or Instagram page, and we'll go on from there. But I think that about wraps up this video. If you haven't already and you still have a hankering to watch some more English Kiwi content, either go back and watch the whole series or check out the range test, the full range test for this rifle, and you can see the moment I realised that the hop wasn't quite working as we expected, and also see that I'm not just making this up and I was legitimately making these hits that I've shown you. So, until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you all soon. Adios.